Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Hey everyone, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategy Podcast, and we're going to be bringing you an episode from a lady who is extremely intelligent and understands business in I would say probably in the top 5% of people that I actually have had the pleasure to converse with. She started from nothing, built up her company into the millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And her name is Lisa, and her last name is Parziale. And she owns a company called Portside Marketing, LLC. They are an SEO company and other type of things that go with digital marketing. And she also owns a thing called the Agency Fast Track. And so she and I talked a lot about what it takes to build a business. And, you know, there's some great nuggets within the business. And she shared another one even after our conversation, which is, you know, she only hires companies as employees. In other words, if you don't own an LLC, you can't come in to work for her company. And why would she do that? Well, she's a business to business company. She wants people who understand how to talk to business owners. Very, very smart. And she has always subscribed to getting your foot in the door first, because if you don't get your foot into the door, you don't have the ability to build a relationship. We talked at depth about that as well. We talked about the ideal persona and why a company really should have their ideal persona dialed in, or at least their ideal personas, plural, dialed in. So anyways, I believe you're going to enjoy this. Let's go welcome Lisa to the call. Hey everyone, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategy Podcast. And today we're doing an amazing episode with a wonderful woman. Her name is Lisa Parziale, and she owns a digital marketing company doing multiples of millions of dollars and serving clients at the highest potential level. And we're going to have some discussions today on and around what it takes to build a business. As we know, this CEO Sales Strategies podcast is for CEOs to be sharing their best practices so that you can model those, and we'll go from there. So, Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
Thank you. You have an amazing background that I think a lot of people would really appreciate. The fact is that, you know, you grew up in a place and then went to work for a company, and the company that you were at, you sort of got this epiphany. I don't think I want to be here anymore. So a lot of people, when they're starting companies, you know, especially from the beginning, I mean, they start that way, but it takes courage to go there. So could you kind of elaborate on the path of what got you to actually move out of the corporate world into your own business, down doing, millions and millions of dollars?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Doug, it's probably a path that so many other people have gone down. And it's simply that one day you wake up and realize you hate your job and it's affecting your life. And you're young enough that you're going to have to do this for so many more years. It's almost a debilitating thought. And to think about, at the time, I was going to have to continue to do what I was doing for 30 more years plus. If I were fortunate enough to be able to have enough money to retire, I just couldn't do it anymore. And it's not usually you that gets you out of something. But then at the time, I had a loved one who was in a horrible job. And so it was really to get my spouse out of her job, to get her out of her job, that really was the catalyst that threw me over. But at the end of the day, it really was unhappiness and having a life that's just not what you dream of, right? We all dream of having that freedom and having money, but being able to be in control of our life. And I felt so out of control.
So many entrepreneurs feel the same way. I mean, we get to a place and it's like, oh, I can't take it anymore. I mean, I remember I was in places, with those literal golden handcuffs, right? I mean, I had little children and I had all those things, and I had to make the very same decision. And I think what you said is something bigger than ourselves, even though the motivation and the drive comes from in within, that we've got to do it for us. But when we find something else, in your case, your spouse, and in my case, it was my children. I was like working 7 days a week, literally, and I remember getting a call at 10 o'clock at night where my wife called me and she said, you coming home tonight? And I said, sure, I'm just finishing up. And I said, why? She goes, well, your 1-year-old daughter and I have been sitting here waiting for you to come home. And I said, oh, okay, I'm sorry. She goes, do you realize it's your birthday and we have a cake on the table right now? It was right around that time that I started thinking about what you were talking about. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm making, hundreds of thousands of dollars every single year at this job. But the reality is you don't get back that time and you're not in control of one's life. And for you, it was your spouse. I remember reading in an article that your spouse just couldn't, you booked this amazing trip. It was like an 18-day trip or something that you two were going to take. And then her company came back and said, oh, sorry, we're not going to give you the time off after you've already booked the trip. Is that accurate?
That's exactly how it went. Literally, she came home from work very angry and told me that we were going to have to cancel the trip or she would be fired. She would no longer have a job. And not because there was something major going on, but I think if I remember right, because the business owner decided he had wanted to take that week off. So she just was expected to change. That was the catalyst for us, that we knew we weren't in control. And
right.
We had spent so much time dreaming about this trip, planning it, because we had another episode in our life. We actually had something right before that where an older couple had given us some advice and took us aside and said, look, we watch you ladies, you work all the time. They got to the end of their life. They got to where they could retire. They had put millions away. And then they got into a horrific car accident and couldn't spend $1 of it because they couldn't go anywhere. And that's when they said, hey, go live your life. So we go and we get this trip all booked. And when she came home and said that, at the time it was, I want to say it was like early in the year, and we had to the end of the year. And that's when we decided we're going to get you out of this job by October. So we go on this trip. That was all the motivation we needed. And she quit her job in June.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow. So all of you listening, what's your why, so to speak, right? Exactly. What are you doing this for? And most of you, you're going to find out that you're doing it for some level of quality of life that you're not satisfied about. And that's why you probably went into business. And so now you get into business, Lisa, and let's talk about going from zero to the first 7 figures, right? I mean, because a lot of times people who are listening here, even though many of them are over 5 million in revenue, some of them are not. And so going from the first 0 to 1 million, what would you give as, if you could say, hey, these were the first or second or third thing that I would recommend any business owner doing to get from 0 to 7 figures in a quick manner, what would that be?
Hands down, be the CEO from day one. That hands down. So you're not going to do the work anymore. We're so conditioned to be workers that when we leave the workforce, we tend to continue being workforce, right? So we're going to do all that work. We're not going to hire. Most entrepreneurs don't have that business background. We don't have that education. So we try to balance, I'm going to do this and eventually I'll hire. If I had to do it all over again and I had to start over tomorrow with nothing, I would beg, borrow, steal, get a loan, do whatever to hire my first worker tomorrow, because I don't have time to work in my company. I have to work on it. And I know it's cliche. You hear that all the time. But time, like you had said earlier, Doug, you can't get that back. You can always make more money, but you can't make more time. So if you've got this goal to get from 0 to whatever in a certain period of time, backwards engineer that and figure out how you're going to get there, right? What exactly you're going to do. And the one thing you're going to realize really quick is you have no time to fool around with being a worker or a fulfiller or anything like that.
Backfill or back engineer. I love that word, right? Because so many of them people, they don't in business. So let's say that they back engineer this whole thing and they figure out, okay, so what I'm hearing is Lisa says, start with your life first. Build your life out. How do you want your life to be? And then back engineer that into your business and say, okay, this is the quality of life I want. So now what kind of business do I need to build? And Lisa, that usually what I have found doing that is it leads to the right model, because a lot of times companies are in just in the wrong model and they're not in a leveraged model. Like you said, don't be everybody. And I think in the beginning when people do this, it's because they are thinking, I got to have all the money.
Yeah, we're so motivated by the money because we think money is going to solve all of our problems, when in fact, money is how we're going to buy the lifestyle we need, right? So it's not going to solve a problem that you present. When you first start out, use your money smartly to put in the staff, to figure out exactly who's going to do the work. Because remember, we are the CEOs. It is our job not only to be the CEO of our business, but the CEO of our life. So if travel is important to you, opening up a brick and mortar store that requires your presence is a bad idea, right? I mean, ultimately, think about where you want to be a year from now, 5 years, 10 years, and then yes, backwards engineer exactly what you need to make happen. It took me so long to kind of learn those lessons, but once you learn them, the amazing thing is if I had to start from 0 tomorrow, I know I can make 7 figures in a year or less. And I can continue to do that. And I can probably do it in almost any business I chose. I may not enjoy that business, but I certainly now have learned the lesson. You're the guy, the girl, the person, literally that has to make all the decisions. So you need time to do that.
What I'm hearing out of that is once you have a successful model, a successful template to build out from 0 to 7, you could do that at any time. It's kind of like, I'll call it the Tom Brady model of football, right? I mean, Tom Brady, like him or not, folks, he's had a lot of successes and he keeps duplicating that. And so Lisa, that's what I see you're doing is you have this template that you worked through all these years. And if you got to restart, you would just go right to that template of what you already know.
Exactly. And Doug, you bring up Tom Brady. Let's think about that for a minute. Tom Brady is the CEO of his team, so to speak, right? He's a leader. If you go to and look at all the GOATs, right, all the greatest of all times, especially a quarterback, the ones that are the greatest of all time had one unique thing they did well, and that was they knew how to lead. And leadership, that's the number one goal, right? You're the CEO, you're the person that leads that ship. Ultimately, that's part of his success. Plus, he spends his time on things that will get him where he needs to go, and he does not spend his time on other things.
Well, that's another thing that I read in your article. You talk about CXO, right? CXO. And would you explain what CXO is? I know what it is, but people who are listening are probably going, what is a CXO?
Yeah. So, as you know, Doug, I'm actually, someone who helps other people learn how to do what we do. And I had to come up with a way to help them really make a mind shift into the idea. And CEO, when you think about Chief Executive Officer, I don't think it does it justice, right? That role sounds to me very procedural and very mechanical. So we came up with the CX. X is standing for everything you want in life, because that's your job to go get that. Mm-hmm. Your job is not to build a big company that makes a lot of money. Your job is to replace the X with what you want in life. So the CXO might be, I'm the chief happiness officer. Only I can make myself happy. I'm the chief financial officer. Only I determine what finances I have or how much money I make. And you just keep replacing X with all of the hats that you need to wear to get everything you want in life. People always say, well, you want to push past the ceiling. I'm like, why do we even have to have a ceiling? Frankly, if you want to reach for the stars, why do we have to have stars? Why not reach for the universe? And the only way you can do that is to think about where that journey leads you and then put on whatever hats needed at the time to get that done. But it's up to you. The CXO is the person that owns it, does it, and lives a life like nobody has ever lived.
And remember, folks, you can have more than one CXO in your company. So, that CX, for example, Lisa, I remember reading some of the articles that I was reading about you, and you took on sales as your primary role because you found out, hey, this is what I really like to do. So I would fill in the CXO with the CS, Chief Sales Officer, right? Your job is to drive sales. And I've always subscribed to the thought that if you're under $1 million, you really don't need to focus on a lot, but leverage and driving sales. Those are the two things. Leverage comes from just what Lisa was saying, having, people in there to help you so you're not doing all the things you're not supposed to, and focusing on generating sales. So Lisa, let's go from the million up to the multiple millions now that you're doing. What changes, or does anything change? Is it just something different, or are you scaling differently, or?
Yeah. And you just hit the nail on the head, Doug. It's scaling, right? You have to define your processes. So, every minute, it takes to do something, how much it costs to do something. And then as you hire the right talent to do those things, trying to find ways to streamline those things to not always, a lot of people think about cutting costs, and it's not about that. It's really about efficiency so you can deliver the same amazing product or service as a multi-million-dollar company that you did when you were a one-man guy, right? Or girl. That's what's important. So it's, for us, I would say it's our processes. Every little thing we do, everybody on the team that's doing it knows exactly how it should be done, has been trained. We've invested in those processes, in that training, in that time to make sure everybody's on board. And then we make sure everyone's happy, and we put the right people in the right roles. And I think between, our processes and really finding the right people, the sky's the limit when you get that down.
So it's about system, process. And I once had a friend of mine say, making money's boring, right?
It is.
and making a lot of money is super boring. That's what he said, because you're doing the same thing over, but now you're multiplying one's efforts through the process of duplication and systems and processes. And, I'll add one more thing to that and then ask you a question. Metrics, tracking the numbers. I have found that to be invaluable for anybody that I've ever built a business with, or, even clients that I help, right? Because they're not tracking the small metrics that go through that tell the story. To scale, up into the multiples of millions of dollars, or even, going to multi-8 figures. Can it be done, do you think, without tracking those numbers? And if so, what is the end result of not tracking them?
I don't think it can, Doug. I'm with you that you have to know your metrics, and not just money. A lot of people love to look at their money, right? We all love to count our money, but sometimes we forget to count satisfaction, for example. So one of the biggest measures we look at is our lifetime value. So how long does a customer stay with us on average? And how does that benchmark to the industry? So on average, if somebody stays 3 years and you can get your customer base to stay 4 or 5, that's how you're going to make more money, right? Because it's ultimately the numbers that tell the story and show you where the possibilities are, where the gains are, where you have problems. or literally where you can make more profit without doing very much. So yeah, I would say metrics are hugely important, but not focusing always on the money. Go for some of those little things like customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, and some of those other metrics that will really tell a story for you. Because remember, if your customers and your staff are not happy, it's not going to go well.
No, in fact, they'll be churning clients faster than they want, and you'll churn employees that way too. It's the worst one I've ever seen, Lisa, was 82% annual turnover of the employee base. Crazy.
And honestly, it costs you more money to attain a customer or a staff member than it does to retain those same people. And again, if you're only focused on the monetary number, the money, you lose sight of some of the other metrics that tell a different, bigger story that's more important. Right.
And it's just not as fun. Right? It's just not as fun when you're just grinding it out every day. A lot of times when I look at companies and I go in there, I find, 3 or 4 or 5 things. They're just levers that they've turned off or just neglected. And then all of a sudden, I turn them back on, like they've not re-engaged their dormant clients ever, something like that. Right. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, we just got a big pile of money. How'd that happen? So if you're measuring by what you're saying, not just the numbers on sales, but measuring by client satisfaction or retention of the client, how many years can we extend that client to keep them buying, increasing buying frequency in that particular aspect. This is where I see a lot of companies that are, get to say 1 million and want to scale up to multiples of millions. They start going there. And then all of a sudden, if they grow fast, they actually implode. And it's because they're not tracking the numbers. I talked to one guy, gentleman, he scaled from 3 million to 17 million. And he was 60 days out of business. And I asked him why, and he said, I don't know. I said, let's look at your books. And I found $11 million uncollected over 180 days.
Wow.
So isn't that crazy? So imagine if you had one of those metrics that we're talking about where you're measuring collection time on your invoices. And that was something that one had as a particular, badge of honor in that department, right? It just changes the game. And I think another thing that you do expertly that a lot of people don't do, I find a lot of companies struggle on being very clear with their ideal client or their ideal customer. I don't find you do that at all based on everything I know about. I think you're really clear and dialed in on that. And so what would you advise a person who is, say, semi-clear about who their ideal customer is, and what would be the processes or the process that you'd recommend them to get there?
Yeah, I mean, the first exercise we always go through is really defining who that ideal customer is. And ideal is the key word, right? So if I had my dream customer and this is the person I would love to sell to each and every time, who is that? Then digging into everything about that customer. Where do they live? What do they do for hobbies? What do they like to eat even? I don't care what it is. You're really trying to define almost like this fake person in your mind. This is the exact person that I would find to be an ideal customer. And the reason you're going through that exercise, the more you know about somebody, you think about detectives, for example. When they're trying to find someone, what's the first thing they do? They go interview family and friends. They learn about them. What do they like? What are their hobbies? It's because then they know where to find them. And so when you really know who your ideal customer is, all of a sudden you can see them everywhere and you know exactly where they're hanging out. You know where to find them. And most of the time you know how to approach them because you have all this data about them. And it sounds easy, but sometimes it isn't to get that type of data. So the first thing we always do is we actually do focus groups. I'm going to ask people I think are my ideal clients some questions to, one, see if they are, and two, to probe them to get the kind of details I need to get my bigger set of ideal clients.
Really?
Yeah.
You're not going to do the thing that Coca-Cola did and just put out the thing called New Coke and then find out the market doesn't want it. You're going to actually go and figure out what the market wants first. Is that what I just heard?
Yeah, it's funny, Doug. They'll actually tell you. I don't care if it's selling, we sell a lot of digital services in my primary company, in our training business, it's different. So each side is a little different, but on both sides, we ask, right? We ask. It's amazing when you ask a question, not only do the ideal customers come to the cream to the crop or to the top, often the focus groups and the people you're talking to become your customers, right? So you can even use the focus groups almost like a get in the door method. You're weeding out the people you don't want, finding the people you do, and there they are right in front of you.
So please finish.
I say it's a double-edged sword, right? You get both sides of that. You get every information you want, and you often pick up a couple customers along the way.
We're talking with Lisa from Portside Marketing and the agency Fast Track, and she's sharing some amazing and wonderful things. And so we're going to go right back now. Let's go back to focus groups for a second, because a lot of times, people think of focus groups. Well, I've got to get a bunch of people into a building and I've got to put them around a table and I got to pay people to do this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Is that true? Or can you do it without a lot of money out at play?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's true at all. And when you start looking at silver linings, so you think about the pandemic, for example, and all the bad things, let's think about the good things. People now accept Zoom and embrace Zoom. And having these focus groups, imagine the old round table, so to speak, you would get people around. It's just now a Zoom call. You don't have to pay them, in my opinion. I haven't paid anybody. Maybe you offer them a little incentive. For instance, when we're selling courses and we do a focus group on what we should build, oftentimes the people in the focus group will get a discount if they choose to join the program. But to straight out pay people, maybe if you're Coke, you're talking about Coca-Cola, maybe they have to pay people to come in and drink, their Coke. But in our experience, we don't. Plus, now think about this as well. You already have some really good customers in your business that you probably say to yourself, I wish all my customers were like that one. Go to those customers, ask them what they would like to see. Ask them if you could improve upon what you do. Get to know them better. You sometimes have an entire focus group already in your own company that you can leverage.
And here's the thing, folks. She's absolutely right. All you have to do is ask, and they will actually want to help you. If you ask, just say, I'm looking for some help, and I appreciate who you are and where you are in life and what you've done in business. And I really think that I could be, have some invaluable insights from you. Would you be willing to do a group focus group or a one-on-one conversation? And it's not that difficult, but the reason I bring this up, Lisa, is I talk to so many business owners. There's like, no, I don't want to spend time doing that. And I'm like, you are dealing with 6 different groups and your marketing is everywhere and your sales messages are all over the place. Maybe you only need 1 or 2.
Exactly.
Right. And so I love what you have a sales strategy, but you only have one sales strategy that I could get by reading. Is there more than one right now? Because if I don't want to mislead people.
I mean, we definitely have plenty of avenues we could go, but we don't tend to do that. Our main strategy is to get in the door. And I'm sure that's what you're referring to.
That's exactly what I'm referring to.
You hear it all the time, to get in the door. But what I do is ensure that not only do I get in the door, but I do it with a very low cost, low risk product, right? I like to compare it to buying a Cadillac. If I want to buy a Matchbox Cadillac that's $5.99, how much information do you really need to make that purchase decision? All you care about is it's safe for your child. Done. But if I want to buy an $80,000 Cadillac, I have a bigger buying decision to make. So it's going to be a long road to get there for most people. So you have to earn their trust, right? You have to show them how great you are. I do that not only, most people say, well, you do that because then you get in the door. Well, not only do you get in the door with them, but when you go to sell your main service, you can actually charge a higher rate for it than you would have been able to charge had they not known you exist. Now, we sell a lot of digital marketing that customers don't understand. And so if they meet us and they don't know us, we're not going to be able to command the kind of money we can command as if when they know us and know what we can do and how much we care. So we can take a $2,000 a month sale and make it a $3,000 or $4,000 a month sale. So it serves two purposes, not just to get in the door, but to upsell or, make our services way more valuable.
Stephen Covey wrote a book, I think it was called The Speed of Trust. The more trust that somebody has, the quicker the speed to, let's just call it the sale.
Yeah.
What you're doing is you're creating very high value proposition on the front end, and you're giving more than you're probably getting to look at the lifetime value, say, hey, if I can get in the door here and I can understand what's going on with these people, and I can figure out what their pains, their frustrations, their fears, their desires are, and I have a match that happens just to be a little bit bigger or a lot bigger, then that's going to lead, because they've already established the trust. And so you get into the door, and then you're upselling or cross-selling into the process. The
right.
other,
yeah. we have distinct strategy where we step them up what we call a success stairway. We know exactly where they're going to come in. If they come in at that point, we know exactly where we're going to try to lead them and walk them through sometimes several. It's not always the first purchase and then you go for the bigger one. Sometimes they go up 2 or 3 different steps of products or services until they get to the one we really ideally want them to purchase. That solves 2 things. Not only are you making money to prospect and find your ideal customers, but you're also weeding out those customers that are not ideal. And you're having the opportunity at a very small level to figure out. So if we bring somebody in the door in a print job that really has very little value, if they're undesirable to work with at that level, imagine what they're going to be like on a big, digital marketing contract. We wouldn't want to work with them, so you can weed them out. So it does serve both. We find our ideal customers, but we also, can weed through and get rid of those that really aren't our ideal customer. We just stop communicating with them and we don't try to upsell them, the next step.
And that's so important, because so many people, I hear them say, oh, I had this bad client, or I had this bad customer, the customer from heck or wherever, right? And my response to them is, there is no bad customer. There's only bad decisions on your end to actually take that customer. And, I guess every once in a while, somebody could be fooled. But what I'm hearing from you is, look, I get in the door, I understand everything that I need to understand. And then we either disqualify that and we move on, or we qualify that and then we go through and sell into that to serve the client on a higher level.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And, really, Doug, as far as bad customers go, sometimes they're not bad customers. They just don't understand something, or they need to have something else that you're not providing. And knowing who they are, if you've already worked with them at the lower level, by the time you get to those higher level services or products, if we ever have a bad customer, so to speak, it's typically that they came in on the high level and we never got to go through the relationship with them. So we didn't really know who they were. Obviously, people do come in and buy your high level services without going through maybe, your steps. That's when we typically have that. But every time we've been in that position, if we reach out to the customer and just are transparent, look, we don't feel like this is going well, and we want to understand why, and we communicate with that customer, we are never surprised by the answer. And it's always, I don't understand what I'm buying. I don't understand what you're doing. It's really not that they don't want to be difficult, but they want to know that their money is being used appropriately and they're getting what they pay for. So it's typically still comes back, like you said, it comes back to us, and maybe we didn't do something correctly.
Well, I find a lot of people, they look at, well, many of them don't even do this, but I find a lot of companies, they'll score a lead. Let's say the lead will come in and they'll apply some metrics and they're like, oh, it's qualified or not qualified. But what they're not scoring is the client acquisition cycle. And what I hear you doing very like a master is you're looking at the whole client acquisition strategy, and you're saying, okay, we're going to apply qualifiers and disqualifiers to each point along that process. And folks, if you didn't catch that, that's genius. So you really want to be doing this. And here's, not only are you able to increase the transactional value on that sale, but I'm going to ask a question. I don't know the answer to this, but I think I do. Lisa, I suspect you have a pretty high referral rate from your client base.
Yeah, we actually have two metrics that I'm really proud of. Obviously, it's the referral rate. About 30% of the business we get come from referrals, which I think is spectacular. And then we have a retention rate that's above the norm. So most of our customers on average stay 6 to 8 years.
Okay.
And that includes the ones who leave in the first year. And we have some that have been with us since before we were legit, so to speak, right? When we were doing it on the side as a side job. So yeah, 100% how you get there is transparency. You have to know your customers. You have to engage with your customers. You have to talk to your customers. In our line of work, customers don't always understand what they've even purchased. It's up to you to define that for them over the first few months, and also to educate them on a high level of what you've done for them and the successes you have. A lot of people are afraid to toot their own horn, so to speak.
Right.
But how is the customer going to know how well you're doing if you don't tell them? Because they're busy just like you are. They're probably not going to go look. Especially important in a service-based business. You always need to remind them how well you're doing or how well you're doing as a company. Brag about your awards, brag about your successes. There's nothing wrong with that.
Well said. Well said. Lisa, if somebody wants to contact you or get a hold of you or learn more about you and Portside Marketing and Fast Track, the agency Fast Track, how do they get a hold of you or learn more?
Yeah, honestly, if you type in Agency Fast Track, you'll find us. It's agencyfasttrack.com. If you're interested in digital marketing, portsidemarketing.com is our agency. I'm everywhere. You type in Lisa Parziale, you're not seeing my face probably. And if not, you can find me. So we're pretty easy to find.
Thank you. And we'll put all those in the show notes, and we'll put everything in there so that you folks can just, click and go. So one last question I'd like to ask you, Lisa, before we go. I love asking this question because I get so many interesting answers. If you could be anyone, past or living today, and you could just recreate yourself and you could be that person, and you could be that person for, let's say, a year, who would that person be, and what would you do to make the world a little better place?
I don't know if you're going to like my answer, Doug, but I'd be me.
That's awesome.
Because I really feel like we are making the world a better place now. I'm at the stage of my life where I am building my legacy, and I'm feeling really great about it. Had you asked me that question 10 years ago, the answer most likely would be different, but I wouldn't ever want to be anyone more than me right now.
And that is so key for people in life to enjoy their life. So I'm grateful to hear that. Thank you very much. Well, I welcome everybody's comments coming through here. If you have any comments, please do so. If you have any questions for Lisa, also you can email them to us, and I'll make sure that she gets them. Lisa, I want to thank you for being on the call. It's been a real pleasure, and you're a very smart lady.
Thank you, Doug.
You are welcome.
I appreciate you having me here, and I love talking business and love reading your articles and seeing your stuff.
Thank you. Till next time, folks. Wow, was that great or what? Lisa shared a lot of really cool nuggets with us, right? And, just thinking of ourselves as the CXO and, fill in the X with whatever you're doing. If you're in the, genesis of your company, from 0 to 7 figures, you better be the chief SO, the cheap, not cheap, but chief sales officer. Because all you're really needing to do to get to 7 figures is focus on how do you have client acquisition and how do you grow your revenues through that process. Once you get past that 7-figure mark we talked about, you got to go into systems, processes. You got to have people, and don't be afraid to bring people in early. One of the reasons that I find companies don't bring people in early, especially in the organic growth, if they're not funded, is they feel they don't have the money. And there's other ways to bring people in. People work for money, yes, but they work for mission. Now, as the owner and the founder and the person who's building this, you might have to go in the beginning a little bit, without, and that's the price you pay to get the freedom and fame later on. But don't forget getting people, because what ends up happening is a lot of the owners, when they start up a company or they're not at 7 figures, they feel, well, I got to keep all this profit. I got to keep it all, because if I have a goal to make, 400,000 a year and I'm doing, 700,000 or 800,000 and I'm a service-based business and I'm at a 50% profitability. Well, I can't be at a 40% and hire somebody because then I won't get my 400 grand. And that's part of the problem with a lot of folks in that mindset. And a lot of people get into the multi-millions. They still have that. And what they're not doing is reinvesting into the business. The business will require. It doesn't care how we feel. It requires money. And the bottom line is our job is to go out and feed that business. And in turn, that business will then feed you. So really appreciate you being here. If you like what we're doing here, please go up and give it a nice review. Share this with other people, post it on your social media, and send in your questions and comments to me. And I will be happy to take those in and look and see what we could do for future shows and bring you the information that you seek. Until next time, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategy Podcast. To your success.